am Jasmine Masters, and I have something to say. RuPaul's Drag Race has...
Okay, divas, I'm gonna save you some time. No, it didn't. Drag Race did not kill drag as an art form. It's been around forever. And the show's only been around for like less than 20 years, and it's just kind of moderately successful. So there's no way this show can destroy an art form. I don't know, people who like say that Drag Race has killed drag are either idiots or envious or both. Lots of people are both. I wrote a whole song about both. It's called I Hate Billie Eilish. Please don't listen to it. It's not very good. This is my Venmo. Please send me money. I need to make rent. Do I need to clean this? I feel like it's smudged. Okay. So while I do think that Drag Race hasn't killed drag as an art form, I do want to go in depth on how Drag Race has impacted the art form, and I'm going to be kind of critical about that. I think Drag Race has the chance of potentially killing itself. It's kind of become a snake eating its own tail kind of thing. And like, I am a super fan of the show, so anything I say is like, I'm going to be very critical, but I do love the franchise. It's helped me drastically through everything. Oh, I need to get a thumbnail. That was going to be my thumbnail. I am a super fan of the show. I love the show. I respect the show. I love RuPaul. I know RuPaul is controversial, but I love RuPaul. So everything I say, even though I'm going to be critical, it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a deep interest of the show. Like, I watch every season multiple times. I've seen some episodes of The Pit Stop dozens of times. I follow like recap series. I listen to all the podcasts. I love drag. I love Drag Race. I feel like a lot of times when people are critical about the show online, they're kind of just like shitty about it. Like, they don't acknowledge the fact that they love the show. We love the show. We all love the show. So to start off this conversation, Drag Race is oversaturated. That's kind of been well known. I feel like a lot of times when people talk about like why Drag Race is doing poorly, they talk about oversaturation. And while I do think there's some truth to that, and I want to talk about it a little bit, it's kind of been talked to death, so I don't want to go too in-depth on it. So I'm just going to take for granted that Drag Race is oversaturated to a degree. But also, I don't know if I want to take that for granted, because like, what does oversaturated versus bigger than ever mean? I feel like, I don't know, like, why do you think it's oversaturated versus successful? Like, it's doing better, whatever, I'll get into that later. So I wanted to talk about this topic because of this tweet by Crystal Envy. She's from season 17, this current season of Drag Race. And she goes, honestly, it's really sad the girls don't get the same engagement they used to. Like, most of our goals is 100K followers on Instagram. Yet just a few seasons ago, the girls used to hit 100K within the first episode. What happened? And then in response, Meatball quote, hey girl, shut the fuck up. Which, I want to say this, Meatball, hi Meatball, I love Meatball. I'm incredibly intimidated by Meatball. She leaves comments on my things talking about how she want to smash. I love her drag. I loved her drag for years. I find her really intimidating. She has a night called Fat Slut. I go almost every month, but also she is a raging. But I do think there is some like truth to that. Like, okay, the queens are kind of, the newer queens are getting less and less engagement. And there's sort of like this intuitive idea that if the girls get less engagement, then the show isn't doing as well. Like this Reddit post. I follow her, but I can't be pressured to follow every Drag Race girl. There is too many. It should be there are too many, but whatever. So I get that because there are more queens now than there have been in the past. People feel like it's, I guess, more efforting to try and keep up with it and keep up with all the new queens and embrace them like they have with older ones, which, like, I guess that makes sense. God, I talked about how I didn't want to talk about oversaturation, and now I am talking about oversaturation. Whatever. So, like, gay people, we as queer people, we get to choose our families. But sometimes we talk about Drag Race, we talk about it, like, as sports. We call it, like, the gay NFL or something, which the NFL is already really gay. Like, a bunch of men ramming into each other. Mama. But, like, sports is huge, and there isn't necessarily a sense of oversaturation, right? So I don't think that sports is a good metaphor for, Drag Race. I think it's more like a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Drag Race is bigger than ever, but it's just kind of, I think people think that they need to be like caught up on all the seasons in order to enjoy it, where like for the like sports you don't have to be caught up on every season to enjoy it. I don't, there's this weird like thing where like people say that Drag Race is like failing, and they say it's failing because it's oversaturated, but then it's doing better than ever. Like, ratings-wise, like, season 16, the one that happened last year, its premiere was the highest premiere count since season 3 of Drag Race. And then, like, season 17's premiere was higher than season 5's premiere. And season 5 is considered, like, the best season of the entire show. So it's like, why are people thinking that this show is... Why do I think? I think that the show is not necessarily failing, but, like, it's going somewhere bad. I don't know a better word for it, but it's going somewhere bad, even though it's doing very well. I don't know. And I think the main reasons is that, like, while the show may be doing the best it's ever done, the girls aren't getting the same love. I remember around last year, season 16, Nymphia Wind, who won the season, before the premiere, the finale even happened, she had like 700,000 followers, or like 600. She had a lot of followers. But I'm gonna look right now. Hold up. But yeah, now before the premiere, Jules has 200,000. Anya has 140,000. Sam has 116,000, and Lexi Love has 200,000. Which, like, there's a lot of followers. But in comparison to where it was last season, where like the queens had a lot more followers, you know. So like, the show's doing very well, but people aren't engaging with the queens the same way. And I think if the girls get less and less social compensation for their work on the show, there's going to be less and less incentive to actually go on Drag Race. And then I think the show could falter if the pool of queens are not trying to get on the show. I don't know, but my main questions going into this... Now it's fucking... I've been recording for like 15 minutes. My main questions I want to address is, why is Drag Race doing better than ever? And why are the queens not getting the same recognition? And then what are the implications of that going forward? Is that the end of the intro? I think that's the end of the intro. Okay, part 1. I wrote like a whole essay, and then I took all my notes, and I wrote all my notes, and now I'm going point by point. So I've done this much of it yet, so we gotta go through more. Anyway, drag is nothing new. I think, like, we as queer people, we get to choose our families. I think it's sort of like a big talking point among conservatives who are... I'm getting hot. I'm taking my coat off. I bought this coat. Ooh, came as buff. Damn. Girl, I can't get my fucking coat off. I got off one sleeve. They're like so tight. Oh, it's so tight. Oh. A lot of times, queer-phobic or homophobic or conservatives, they make an argument that, like, well, now society is getting really bad because you have all this gender nonconformity, you have all this drag, all this woke. And, like, we as queer people, we kind of fight back against that by saying, like, well, drag's nothing new. Drag's always been around. And I think intuitively we know that as queer people, but I always assumed that drag was always around, but it was just kind of, like, off to the fringes. It was there, but it wasn't part of, like, hegemonic pop culture, you know? But that's not true. I think the lull in drag from post-World War I to, like, I guess now, or, like, pre-Drag Race, that was the exception, not the rule. The rule is that, like, throughout history, drag has been celebrated in a lot of mainstream culture. Gay history tangent. We're doing a gay history tangent, guys. Get out your notebooks. I'm just gonna do a little brief history on, like, just some overview of drag that I thought was cool. You know, Japanese kabuki theater, nowadays it's traditionally men who dress up as women. That's kind of what it has become. But it started off as women dressing up as men in the Edo period of Japan. And it was like in the 1600s. And it was women who dressed up as men and women. It was like gender play. Like, bitch, we had Shakespeare wrote Twelfth Night, a whole play about pretending to be a man. And, like, the whole play, like, he had so many people cross-dressing in all of his plays. If you go back to ancient Greek theater, you also had men, like, pretending to be women in plays. And Athena, the goddess, she would routinely pretend to be a man in, like, stories and shit. In England in the 1800s, we had panto dames, like, pantomime, you know them? Like, they're, like, these, like, they're like clownish Bianca Del Rio looking drag queens who perform for children. But, like, in the 1800s, there was the Rebecca riots in England, where these farmers were, they're, like, protesting taxation, and they would dress as women to, like, protest and stuff. And they would, like, riot and burn and do all this crazy stuff. The first drag balls in the U.S., the first drag balls in the U.S. were in the 1860s, and there was this thing called the pansy craze, which was, like, in the 20s and 30s, in, like, pre-World War I America. Oh, God. When did World War I start? Actually, there's pre-World War II America. I think World War II started in the World War I. Okay, yeah. No. It was after World War I. Okay. Right after World War I. I forgot when World War I happened. Right after World War I, there was a thing called, like, the pansy craze in the U.S., where it was just, like, men who dressed as women, and there were these drag queens, and there was it was celebrated a lot by by culture. Around that time, there was this trend called womanless weddings, where it was weddings that were just entirely men who dressed up as women, and then they would perform a wedding as like a joke. They'd be like a grown man would be like a flower girl, or like they would like reveal the veil and it was a man with a big beard, and it was like a big comical like play kind of thing. And the parent teacher association actually would throw these womanless weddings to raise money for the PTA. Which, like, imagine now with like the MAGA cult in the United States trying to throw a womanless wedding, people would freak out. They would freak out. But historically, that was celebrated. Okay, so like tangent over, but like gay tangent over. Drag is bigger than Drag Race. It's been around much longer than Drag Race, and the type of drag that's shown on Drag Race is actually a very new type of drag. I want to get into it more later, but essentially Drag Race has just become what RuPaul's drag. It's RuPaul's Drag Race. But essentially all the queens... Oh, well, this is in the shot, damn it. But essentially the queens are like doing RuPaul's version of drag, which I'll get there later. But like, gender performance is old. And gender performance is not going anywhere until gender is gone. And contrary to what people on Twitter think, I don't think gender is going to be abolished, nor do I think it should be abolished. Controversial opinion, gender is good. Fight me on it. Oh, and then I wanted to talk about just a lot of times conservatives, horrible people, they call drag blackface, they call it woman face, which no, it's not woman face. Women don't own the idea of femininity. Men don't own the idea of masculinity. This isn't like an ethnic group, okay? Men can be feminine and have feminine attributes, but white people can't have black skin. You know, like, drag is a celebration of femininity, but it's also making fun of the concept of gender. That's the whole point of it, where blackface isn't necessarily unraveling or attempting to make sense of the concept of race. It's just making fun of black people. So no, drag isn't blackface. People who say that drag is blackface or analogous to blackface, they don't actually believe that, or they don't care. They don't care because they don't think blackface is bad. They're essentially just trying to own the libs, and all they want to do is just be able to say the N-word. That's it. Drag isn't new. Drag isn't a fetish. Well, sometimes it is. And if it is, there's nothing wrong with it being, okay? If you want to be a little crossy and you want to dress up as, a woman and you want to shave, come on, go for it, okay? But that's not the overwhelming majority of gender performance. Anyway, you don't want a history lesson. You want to be told how bad things are. And I also want to be told how bad things are. So let's go. I want so much fucking money. So talking about the nature of drag and the history of drag. Actually, I didn't finish the nature. Bring it back. I want money. The point of drag is to make sense of gender as a concept. It serves a lot of functions, but at base level, it is a performance style that seeks to articulate and understand and poke fun of a social construct. Okay, now let's get into it. I want money. I want to start with the question, what's the point of Drag Race? Well, I mean, it seems like they market it as it's like the search of America's Next Drag Superstar, Which is just a parody of America's Next Top Model. Like, I think people forget that Drag Race is a parody. It is a parody of reality TV. The point was that it was funny to see men dressed as women doing these things that was done by it's like Project Runway. It's like America's Next Top Model. It's a parody show. At least that's how it started out. It's like a parody, but also a celebration of whatever. So it's marketed as it's a story. It's a season-long story to find America's Next Drag Superstar. But really, the point of the show is to make money. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. It's to make money. So the point of the show is to make money by telling the story of finding America's Next Drag Superstar. And in order for that to work, the audience has to at least come to some sort of consensus and believe that the winner is America's Next Drag Superstar. Like, obviously there are queens on the show, like season 7, like Violet won the show, but like Trixie and Katya are kind of like the two standouts from that season. So like, you don't have to be the most famous, but it's a good rule of thumb that usually one of, if not the most famous person from a particular season is the one who won. And I'm not talking about All Stars. All Stars it's a different show. It has different rules. If you want a video on All Stars analysis, I can do that. But the audience has to come to some sort of consensus that the winner at least deserved it because they embody America's Next Drag Superstar. And then that kind of begs the question of what constitutes America's Next Drag Superstar. And that's a really hard question to sort through. So I think a good place to start is like, who is someone who was crowned America's Next Drag Superstar who wasn't accepted as America's Next Drag Superstar? And I think that person is Raven. Nope. Take it back. Tyra Sanchez won season 2 of Drag Race. And like, okay, as time has gone on, Tyra's become like a raging bitch. I think I hate what she posted about the Vivian. She threatened to bomb DragCon, and she said that Morgan McMichaels was dead. I don't know, she has a lot of things, but prior to that, she kind of, she reacted in that way, in that childish way, because she wasn't welcomed as America's Next Drag Superstar. She wasn't accepted. The question, okay, why did people want Raven to be considered the winner and not Tyra? And I think people say like, oh, well, because Tyra was mean. She was really mean. She showed up as bitchy. Raven was much bitchier than Tyra.
All of you guys think that I'm like...
Do we need to talk about her whole thing with Tatiana?
That I'm like nothing.
I would never say that. Her interview was her look was her book cover was her trying to launch and sell her book to the judges was
So, like, the thing that, like, oh, well, people didn't like Tyra because she was mean and bitchy goes, no, that's not true. That's not, no. I think the thing is that people just liked Raven more. And they liked Raven more because early Drag Race was, like, it really latched onto the internet a lot more than other shows at the time. But yet Raven was kind of seen as an authority because she had her whole like fashion photo review with Raja, and so she was like making content that made her be considered an authority on something, and she kind of continued to do more and more and bigger. Where Tyra didn't necessarily do that. And I think people forget like how well Tyra did on the show. Tyra dominated her season. She did very well. Like, she deserved the win if you're just going on the metrics of, like, who did the best in the challenges. But I don't think that's what makes America's Next Drag. This isn't people call it a competition, but that's only a part of it. People say, like, the real race comes after Drag Race. Like, Trixie Mattel is kind of like a poster child for that. Because she didn't do well, and then wasn't super well, they liked her, wasn't super well received. She wasn't like a Katya, you know?
You're the blueprint. You really are. Just like going on Drag Race, doing awful, and then becoming famous after the fact. I'm just like, goals, honestly.
Okay, so thank you.
But she put in a lot of work after the fact to like build an empire, and then she became she's like the most beloved queen from Drag Race. And Tyra it reminds me of a Miss Continental. If you win Miss Continental, it's not like you win the pageant and then you're done. For your reigning year of Miss Continental, you kind of have to like travel around the country and you have to like go to events. It's like, it's not a one and done type of thing. You have to like carry the crown and honor the crown as you go on, especially for that next year. You kind of have to hold the torch and build the franchise of Miss Continental, and I think Drag Race is very similar. Tyra didn't take it upon herself to really do things that were new and build upon it. And when I talk about like the Miss Continental, it reminds me that like on earlier seasons of Drag Race, they really picked apart pageant queens. Like on season 4, there's like the whole thing with like Fifi versus Redacted Needles, where she's like a tired-ass showgirl who's like a more pageanty. On season 5, you had these like Alyssas and these Cocos and these Roxy Andrews who were like these beautiful pageant divas, but they didn't win. They kind of lost to the weird outsider. But, you know, Jinx won, and Alaska was kind of thought of as like one of the favorites. It was these weirder queens that kind of won. Or like season 7's a good example, where it was kind of showcased where it was like Max and Violet as like, nope, not Max, Pearl and Violet as these like newer, more fashionable, new age kind of queens versus these pageant queens of Ginger and Kennedy. And Ginger and Kennedy were not well received. And there's a lot of people who, when you ask them, like, they say they don't like pageant queens. I think it becomes they say because they kind of come off as like stiff and prudish and like overly put together. I think they kind of picked apart Sam Starr a little bit on this past season because of that. And then her like drag mother, I believe, is Trinity the Tuck, and she kind of was able to do well on her seasons because she purposefully went against stereotypes of pageantry. She gave the show a storyline. But I want to argue that I think Drag Race has become a pageant. Like, it's always been a pageant to a certain degree, but as it's gone on, it's become more and more of a pageant system. Like, calling it America's Next Drag Superstar is kind of the same thing as like saying Miss Continental. It's just the biggest drag pageant at the moment. There was a documentary called The Queen, and it was about like drag balls in I think the 60s. Oh god, when was it? The Queen. Yeah, it was in the 60s. And it followed a Crystal LaBeija. Yeah, it was for the 1967 Miss All-America Camp Beauty Contest. And, it follows Flawless Sabrina, but Crystal LaBeija kind of was the standout from it. And Crystal was like, she came fourth. She believed that it was rigged in favor of white people, which it was.
You know she didn't deserve it. All of them, the judges knew it too. Because she was terrible. And her explanation for why she wanted the money. To put it in the bank. She's not getting any money because Sabrina is not going to pay her. They're good friends. It's only publicity, and it's bad publicity.
But it was rigged in favor of white people because it had a very clear idea of this is what it means to be the winner of this pageant. This is what the glamour... A lot of the darker toned queens would lighten their faces to get a better chance of doing well. I don't necessarily want to go too in-depth on like the racial issues of it because I don't think me as a white man is the person who should be talking about the intricacies of race. I don't know, but I can talk about beauty and glamour. A lot of like white supremacy is saying what is glamorous, what is beauty. And in The Queen, it kind of talks about how the pageant system considered this archetype of a drag queen to be worthy of winning. And I think as Drag Race has gone on, an archetype is forming. I think it's slowly becoming a more clear idea of like you have to fit this mold in order to win Drag Race. And it's very bizarre. I remember last season on season 16, from episode 1, I knew that Nymphia Wind was gonna win. Like I wanted Plain Jane to win. I thought Saphira could have deserved the win, but from the first day, I'm like, I know for a fact Nymphia is going to win. It's because she fit this archetype. And I remember later on in the season, she had the least number of wins. And they're doing an interview challenge. And I remember telling my boyfriend at the bar, before the episode started, I go, Nymphia Wind is going to win this episode. When she wins this episode, it will propel her to win the entire series. Because she gave them what they wanted out of a winner. And I knew especially because at the time, she had like 600,000 followers and Saphira had like 200,000 followers on Instagram at the time. And I remember telling my friend, I was like, well, yeah, they're going to give it to Nymphia because she has more followers. My friend was like, what do you mean? Like, they don't care about followers. And I'm like, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Because they want somebody, they want whichever one they think's going to be the most famous after the fact. This is looking for America's Next Drag Superstar. Anyway, let's get back on track. On this season of Drag Race, Jules Sparkles was being... Well, first of all, I hate the name Jules Sparkles. Jules Sparkles. Jules Sparkles. Love it. Jules Sparkles, hate it. But Jules' interview with Latrice asked her... And Jules is a very young queen. And I remember watching her in like... I kind of hated her drag. I loved her as a person, but her drag was very like... I remember watching it and being like, well, it looks nice, but like, girl, what is this? I don't know who you are based on your drag. I know who you are based on your confessionals. I love that. But I don't know what you're giving at as an artist based on your drag. Like, why are you doing drag? What's your point in doing drag? Anyway, in her interview, Latrice was like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And Jules was like, she didn't know. And I think it's because a lot of people nowadays, I have friends who are drag queens, and I feel like I know a lot about drag culture. A lot of times queens, the point of them doing drag is to get on Drag Race. Like, that's why they chose this medium. And then once Jules got on Drag Race, she goes, I don't know what to do after this. I don't know what am I supposed to do after this? Drag Race used to be an outlet for drag that already existed, but now Drag Race is creating the drag that it showcases. And you know what drag it showcases? Expensive drag. So I think a lot of queens, like, they go onto the show and they just want to do good enough to get to the next week. They just want to get to the finale. They want to like do all the Drag Race stuff, right? Instead of like go on there and showcase who you are as an entertainer, which that's definitely something they want to do. But the point of it is to just like, when you're on reality TV, like your biggest fear is being humiliated. And the queens don't want to be humiliated. They don't want ugly looks. I think because of like the desire to do well on the show, it's gotten more and more expensive to get on the show. And that's not anything new either. All Stars 9, all the queens were given a stipend for their one for their appearance, but then another one for their outfits. They're giving, I think like Plastique Tiara spent like $250,000 on her package, which is ridiculous. Granted, that's All Stars, but like queens used to like spend barely any money and they would just make ends meet. And I think drag's gotten more expensive, so the outfits are getting technically better. They're better constructed, but they seem more homogenous. They seem more like AI generated. Like on early seasons of Drag Race, you had some bad looks. There were some bad looks, but you could tell that like they really had a vision. Like they had a. That's why like one of my favorite queens is Delta Work. Okay, is what Delta is wearing, are her clothes good? Not necessarily, but I also don't care, because what she does is she has a clear vision for who she is. She's like the TJ Maxx diva, you know? She has all the inherent glamour of a Ross Dress for Less. So while her looks don't necessarily look the most glamorous all the time, they fit her drag character. Like another one's like Trixie. Like Trixie wears like these cute little dresses all the time, like big hair. It's like they don't look that glamorous, but they look like her. But you can't really wear that stuff on Drag Race anymore, or you'll get picked apart because it's a pageant. It's who looks the most glamorous. So a lot of the looks on the show now are like technically good, but just kind of homogenous. It's weird because I think, okay, well, why do the looks have to be put together and glamorous? Who says that to be a drag queen you have to have a put together look? RuPaul said that. RuPaul says it has to be put together and glamorous. Top to bottom, it has to have a clear, cohesive idea. Because I think drag is so art is so subjective that when you're doing some sort of like pageant thing, you have to be as empirical as possible. And I think glamour, at least when it comes to like the runway, it is a more empirical level to judge something. Okay, I'm editing and I have to be really quiet because my boyfriend is sleeping in the other room. I think that's another reason why in the challenges, RuPaul just says, make me laugh. I just want to laugh. Because that's another empirical standard. So it seems like, and people talk about how they hate that like drag is getting stupid. It's basically like people do whatever they can to make RuPaul laugh, and they do whatever they can to look glamorous. But also, I think the medium in which they're trying to express humor isn't resonating with younger audiences. Like, I'm in my early 20s, so I remember like sketch comedy, but people don't really live for sketch comedy that much anymore. Why are we doing sketches? Unless you're like a real severe like musical theater person, you don't really care about musical theater. So I think that a lot of the challenges are old-fashioned, and they don't necessarily know how to upgrade them, and RuPaul just keeps saying, well, just make me laugh, okay? That's an empirical standard. If you can make me laugh, look glamorous, you got it. Okay, let's go back to it. So the more put together, cohesive, and glamorous an outfit is, the better it's going to be received. There's so much over-the-top glamour because that's what you have to judge them on. Because what else would you judge them on? How much you like it personally? Well, you can't do a competition like that. So, like, there's this big question, like, I hear all the time where people are like, well, Drag Race used to have these really kooky queens, used to have more artistic queens, used to have all this different kind of stuff. But, like, how can you judge somebody like Divine next to somebody like RuPaul? Like, they're both technically drag queens, but, like, if you're being judged on runway, okay, glamour and beauty seems more empirical than just personal enjoyment, because glamour, it relies on like preconceived notions and whatever. So when it comes to like the looks on the show, I think that's why it's becoming more homogenous, is because they have to have some sort of metric to judge the girls on, and why not glamour? Okay, apparently I really didn't discuss this well enough when I was recording. But like Drag Race is a branding competition, and one of the few times you have one-on-one time with the judges and with the audience is on the runway. The rest of the time, it's either confessionals or it's like group stuff. And people get to see who you are in your one-on-one time, which is the runway. Now, if the runways become more homogenous, then it's harder for the audience to see you in it. That's the main issue I was bringing up with the runways. Because people are sacrificing idiosyncrasies and like the novelty of their drag character for glamour. You can really see that with Susie Toot on this past season. People got upset with Susie because every week when that runway came out, she did her little tapping toes, you know, that's what she was doing. She was serving Depression era. And I think it makes her very unique, but people kept getting mad at her because it wasn't glamorous, but also people are getting upset that things are becoming more homogenous. So it's like, make it make sense. What's more important, glamour or self-expression? I think that's the question you have to ask. All right, I'll probably pop up some more. Which is unfortunate because I love non-glamorous drag. But I think this heightened sense of glamour, you can see how much it's influenced culture, like pop culture. And sometimes I just wonder if like there's going to be like a resurgence of like 20s glamour. I wonder if in the future we're going to look back on drag and like this drag big renaissance among this time as like another 1920s, like how we view old Hollywood nowadays. I don't know. Outside of glamour, because we basically pointed out that to be America's Next Drag Superstar, you have to be glamorous. Okay, RuPaul wants glamour. It's not just a beauty contest. Okay, so you have to be glamorous. It's not like you have to be the most glamorous, but you have to be able to give glamour in order to be America's Next Drag Superstar. And I think the audience has now believed that in order for you to be a good drag queen, you have to be glamorous. You have to be put together and glamorous. Okay, outside of that, what do you need to be America's Next Drag Superstar? And I think it's marketability. You have to do well in the challenges. You have to be glamorous, and you have to be marketable. You have to carry the torch of RuPaul. This is RuPaul's Drag Race. There are very like marketable drag queens who aren't necessarily glamorous. Like you have Medea, or you have Divine, or you have like Frankenfurter, but they're not necessarily a superstar, right? The point of the show isn't to find America's next, like the best drag queen. That's not what is not the Olympics of drag. It's to find the next superstar. M-O-N-E-Y-I-want. And I do think that like RuPaul is the drag superstar, right? Saying she's the best drag queen, you can't make claims like that. To say she's the most influential drag queen, you could maybe point that out, but I don't even agree with that. But RuPaul is the biggest celebrity drag queen. And I think now, like, you can't ask why do people pick drag as an art form? That's too broad a question. It's different for each person. But this is RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think you can ask the question, why did RuPaul choose drag as an art form? Part of it has to do with he came up in the club circuits in New York and Atlanta. RuPaul, the character, is essentially a celebrity impersonator. Celebrity impersonation has been around as long as drag has been around. Like there were like Judy Garland impersonators and there's Madonna impersonators, all those people. But RuPaul sort of like abstracted and like, okay, now what does it mean to be a superstar in general? And the character RuPaul is like a caricature of celebrity. Like, a lot of professional working drag queens before, like, RuPaul's time, you had, like, Coco Peru, Varla Jean Merman, Dina Martina, Divine. You had these people who built, like, full personas that they kind of, like, could pretend to be. But RuPaul as, like, a celebrity is more like an amplified version. A lot of the allure of RuPaul in the 90s was that, like, she was just as glamorous as a woman. She could sing like a woman. She had her own TV show. She did her own talk show. She did all this stuff, like what a female celebrity would do, but she's a man. And that's what makes it camp. It's like, it's making fun of the concept of female celebrity while also genuinely enjoying it and embodying it. I think RuPaul wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I think RuPaul was like Lady Gaga, where Lady Gaga calls herself like the artist of, like, she uses she's like the best artist of celebrity culture or something. Like, she uses fame as her art form. And I think RuPaul did a very similar thing. And that's what made RuPaul famous. It's what gave RuPaul their platform. And I respect RuPaul and love RuPaul for what she did for that. But I think now, by going on Drag Race, you have to mimic RuPaul's career path. We've already established that drag's been around forever in a bunch of different iterations, But what it means to be a drag queen now is to be a celebrity. RuPaul used her art, like she was an artist first, celebrity second. And I don't want to like insinuate that like queens are not artists. I'm just saying that I believe a lot of the time their motivations aren't like drag really called to them because it was just the only medium that they could use to express themselves. The only way RuPaul could express herself fully was through drag, okay? I think a lot of times now, people use Drag Race as just like a launching off point to be like a socialite, to be a celebrity. And RuPaul's celebrity impersonation was his art. I don't think that's what it is now. The point is to find America's next drag superstar, not America's best drag queen. The point of the show is to follow RuPaul's career path to become a superstar. You need to be able to do everything a little bit, but you also need to be very marketable and glamorous, which is cool. That's a very respectable art form, but that's not the only way you can do art. You need to build yourself as a marketable archetype that can be sold. And I think that because the glamorous supermodel is already an archetype in culture that's been carved out by RuPaul, and people before, like really carved out by RuPaul, mimicking that archetype, pretending to be the glamorous drag supermodel, is a pretty surefire way to make money. However, I think now, let's bring it back. I think when people talk about the oversaturation of Drag Race, what they're talking about is that they're bored of seeing the supermodel archetype. The supermodel of the world. RuPaul built this persona, right? She built the supermodel of the world. Then she sort of like hoard out this persona and sold it. And then once she did that, other people just tried to impersonate her persona. And glamour is a part of drag. It's kind of always been a part of drag because it's inherently a part of femininity. Like female impersonation has always been there, but it's not the only part of drag. And I don't necessarily think it's not necessary to be a drag queen. So I think people are getting sick of trying to find America's next drag superstar. And I think that I think that in time, Drag Race is just going to become more streamlined version of itself. Is going to become more of a pageant. And I think that artists who believe that drag is the only way they can completely express themselves, I think they're gonna leave Drag Race because Drag Race is essentially becoming gentrified. And like, drag queens are inherently artists, but they're not necessarily very novel artists nowadays. Like, I don't know, I feel like this might be my old man ranting. I'm 23. It might just be my old man ranting, but I feel like as the seasons have gone on, a lot of the queens become more generic. And, you know, there have always been, like, wild, eccentric queens in pageant circuits. There's this, what's her name? Tasha Cole. I love Tasha Cole. There were always eccentric queens in pageant circuits, but they were the exception, not the rule. I think what's gonna happen is, I don't think, at least for the next while, I don't think Drag Race is going anywhere. But I think it's just going to become more and more of itself. I don't think you can realistically expect Drag Race to change that drastically. And I think a rival institution is going to have to grow. And then, like, people can like bring up Dragula. I don't like Dragula, sorry. I think what's really cool about glamorous drag is that it is so subversive by playing with gender in that way. I don't necessarily find Dragula subversive. I think season 1 was really cool, but it just kind of, the whole show has just ripped off the formula of Drag Race, but just done it a little spooky. And it kind of just gives Halloween Horror Nights. So, like, I love all of the kooky, eccentric queens on there, but it's just kind of like Drag Race, but spooky. So I'm not the biggest fan of Dragula, sorry. While I think Dragula might be a little bit spooky to some queer people, I think it's actually easier for straight people to swallow the idea of, like, a spooky person dressed up as a monster versus, like, a man who dresses like a woman, or a trans woman dressing up all glamorous and celebrating herself. So I actually find Drag Race more subversive than Dragula, hot take. But for the future, artists aren't very good at business. Creativity and industriousness are inversely correlated. They are oppositely connected. The more creative and artistic you are, the least likely you are to be good at business. So I think that, like, now that Drag Race has become so streamlined and there's such a clear mold that you need to follow, I think that artists who break out of that mold are going to have a harder time marketing themselves on this sort of platform. The show in RuPaul started off as a parody, a camp portrayal of celebrity culture. has now just became what it was trying to poke fun at. So I don't think Drag Race is going to change soon. I think if you don't like Drag Race for what it is, don't watch it. And like, what do you want to do about it? If you don't like it and you're just like disappointed with how Drag Race is going, support local drag. The validity of Drag Race, it's a valid form of drag. I love Drag Race drag. I love glamorous queens. I love pageantry. I just don't like when it's the only form of art form that you see, which it's not. Go to local clubs. Look up local performers online if you don't want to go out in public. Look at the history of drag. People are like, well, I don't like that drag's looking the same. It's not looking the same. Drag Race is looking the same. Queens aspiring to go on Drag Race are looking the same. But there's a whole host of drag that doesn't exist within that confines. So I think that people who are like pissed, are like, well, Drag Race it's getting too much of the same. And so what? If you actually like drag, watch Drag Race and then also watch other forms of drag. I don't get it. Support local. Megami was onto something. If you love us in the voting booth, If you love us on TV, love us in the voting booth. What'd she say? Support bad drag. Non-celebrity drag is also cunty. So support your local queens. Go do something. Learn your history. Oh my God. Oh, here's my Venmo.